Hey, everybody, welcome to another edition of Books and Things. Today, I want to talk to you about a book by an author by the name of Cal Newport. Newport is a professor of computer science at Georgetown University. He's written a number of bestsellers, including a book called Deep Work, another called Digital Minimalism, and several more. Today, I want to talk about slow productivity. Slow Productivity is a book that really takes issue with the ways in which we think about productivity. If you think about it, so much of our productivity thinking is geared toward a time when most people, what they were doing is essentially producing widgets. Right. And productivity was a matter of how many people we get sort of in the seats, putting the pieces together, and how does that affect what we're able to put out of the factory. But today we live in an age that is marked by so much knowledge work of lawyers, graphic designers, creative workers, right? They're writers, poets, songwriters, so on and so forth. There are so many jobs in our economy today, and increasing numbers so, that rely not so much on clearly defined inputs and outputs as they do, someone sitting in a chair and thinking. Right. And it's really hard to measure what it looks like for that person to be productive because they might do three or four big projects in a year as opposed to producing X number of again, widgets. So surprising, right? What he advocates for in this book is kind of changing our mindset so that we're not thinking about productivity as cranking out a bunch of stuff, but we're actually slowing down and thinking of productivity more in terms of quality. So in his book, he defines slow productivity as a philosophy for organizing knowledge work efforts in a sustainable and meaningful manner based upon the following three principles: do fewer things, work at a natural pace, obsess over quality. All right, do fewer things, work at a natural pace, obsess over quality. And we'll talk briefly about each of those principles. The first one is do fewer things. On page 53 of the book, Newport says, he defines it like this, or this is the principle stated: strive to reduce your obligations to the point where you can easily imagine accomplishing them with time to spare. Leverage this reduced load to more fully embrace and advance the small number of projects that matter most. So just like it sounds, so many of us overload our schedules. I know what that's like. I'm a pastor. I do some teaching on the side. I do a number of other things. I have small children. I know what it's like to overload your plate. And the baseline for a slower view of productivity is to say, take those things off your plate by whatever means necessary so that you can create the time and space to do better work. One of the practical ways in this book, stylistically, it's written in kind of a smart self-help sort of mode. So it's got some science, got a lot of stories. It's engaging, it's visionary, it's practical. But on this do fewer things piece, one of the practical bits of advice he gives is to have others work more, make others do more work. And what that means is, so often someone will assign you a task, right? If you work in an office or maybe you work in a church, somebody kind of gives you something to do. And the default mode is to want to be an agreeable person, to receive what they've given and just kind of take it from there. But one way in order or for us to reduce our workload and do fewer things is to actually ask more of the people who are assigning tasks to us so that we're not left doing all the legwork. So maybe there's a process in place. Maybe you need more information in order to set you up to accomplish the task in maybe half the time that it would take normally. So that's a really helpful and really interesting tip that I want to be working out in my own my own life as I think about productivity. Second principle, work at a natural pace. On page 116, he states it like this: don't rush your most important work. Allow it instead to unfold along a sustainable timeline with variations in intensity in settings conducive to brilliance. So don't rush, right? So much of this sounds like real common sense. But again, we feel like in order to be productive, we have to be going 100 miles an hour. We have to be banging things out. We have to do it quickly. We have to do it, we just got to get it done, right? But Newport really advocates like, hey, work intentionally, work rhythmically, Take the amount of time that that the project needs. Sometimes that means you're working fast, or with a high level of intensity, right? You're staying up late. You're just you're putting the pedal to the metal because you just have to. You're at that point in a project, but you have to counterbalance those times in order to rest, in order to pull back, in order to let things simmer, let things breathe. One of the helpful bits of practical advice that he gives here is to double your project timelines. When we're thinking about productivity, often the way I'll sort of map things out in my own sort of to-do scheme is I'll assign timelines to each thing. How much time do I reasonably think it's going to take me in order to accomplish this or that task? And then I just kind of work out my calendar from there. But what he says is to actually double your project timelines, because that will create more space and it'll take some of the pressure off and it'll allow you to work at a more natural pace. And those two principles, doing fewer things, working at a natural pace, they lead naturally to the third because they create time and space for you to observe the third. And that third is obsess over quality. He states it on page 173. Obsess over the quality of what you produce, even if this means missing opportunities in the short term. Leverage the value of these results to gain more and more freedom in your efforts over the long term. So obsess over quality. Do a good job. Don't just do it good enough for government work, right? Give yourself time, give yourself space to actually make it excellent. One of the sort of practical things that he talks about in this chapter is the idea of improving your taste. When you're good at something, when you sort of find your space in the creative or professional world, you kind of come with a built-in sense of taste. So I can apply this to maybe me as a preacher. I kind of have a taste for what good preaching is, right? I'll listen to Alistair Begg. I'll read sermons from old Puritans, and I'll listen to a number of other people. Maybe it's not so popular to mention Begg right now, but you kind of have a taste for what good preaching is, and then you try to do it and you're kind of bad at it for a while because you recognize a disconnect between your taste for what's good and what you're able to produce. But over time, you sort of learn how to bring your production into conformity with your taste. And at that time, you're not just improving in your creative skills, but you're actually improving in your discernment, improving in your sense of taste. And that's a way in which your quality kind of ratchets up as you give yourself time and space in order to focus on quality. So improving your taste. I think this is a really, really helpful insight that Newport offers when he's talking about obsessing over quality. So that's the book, Slow Productivity. Again, three principles: do fewer things, work at a natural pace, obsess over quality. It's really helpful. I've known a lot of friends who've been really impacted by this book, really enlightened, and trying to think through what it's going to look like. I know for me, I'll be wrestling with it for a little while. Doing fewer things is really difficult for me. I've got 4 kids under the age of 9. I got a lot of responsibilities at the church and in various other projects and things that I'm involved in. But doing fewer things really is what gives you the freedom to slow down and work at a natural pace, obsess over quality, do things better. If anything, that's the baseline of this book. Stop overloading yourself because you think you have to be so productive, and instead focus on the things that truly matter. Do them well for as much time as it takes to do them well. And then from there, trust that the quality of that work will make more of an impact than the quantity of the work you might have been doing before. So again, I want to thank you for joining me for today's installation of Books and Things. Again, the book we've been talking about is Cal Newport's Slow Productivity. I encourage you to check it out. Maybe I'll put a link on this video if I can figure out how, and you can get it from Amazon. All right, until next time, bye-bye.